I'm Aaron Lawler-Patterson, the Goodness Chick. I'm a podcaster, motivational speaker, author, counselor, and proud part of the Mental Health News Radio Network. Join me on the journey of navigating the joys and pitfalls of life, addressing mental health, addiction, raising kids, and giving back. If it takes a village, then join me as one of those villagers. Villagers wanted. So coming to you guys from London, England, in the UK for the next few days for a conference that actually starts tomorrow. But beforehand, I have the privilege in present tense, meeting with Matt Kynaston, who is a mental health activist, philanthropist, has volunteered with an organization called CALM, Campaign Against Living Miserably, as well as being very, very entrenched when it comes to working with men, talking about mental health and just issues we need to be chatting about. So I'm rambling here, but Matt, welcome to the show.
Good to be on. Good to be here.
You are here, man. You are here. I think when it comes to when we talk about boys, we talk about men. When it comes to mental health, I think we have a lot of work to do. I think there's a lot of things addressing, especially in the United Kingdom. The number one cause of death for men is suicide, correct?
Yeah, that's right. So 75% of all suicides in the UK are men, and it's the biggest killer of men aged under 45. Which is we were talking earlier and we were saying that for when I first heard that statistic, I was really shocked and felt like I needed to do something about it, or just felt like I needed to tell as many people as I could. But that was because obviously depression had affected me, and I kind of felt like if I had heard that statistic before, then maybe it would have made me approach my mental health in a different way. And so
how did you approach it before?
So when I was first diagnosed with depression in late 2013, I completely I just disregarded the diagnosis. I didn't think it was real. I didn't really want to believe it, and kind of I think because of general stigma around mental health, even stigma towards not just mental health as in like if you have it there's something wrong with you, but mental health is in that one of the stigmas is that you don't believe that it's actually a thing, or you think that you might just need to change your circumstances a bit and then you'll be happier. You just need to achieve more or buy more or do more of the things that you want to do. So I just decided actually one thing that I really wanted to do was to go traveling, and I hadn't had the chance yet. So I just quit my job, went traveling, didn't take any of the medication or any of the advice that was given to me, and things got progressively worse. And
where were you when things kind of, we'll say, when they hit the fan?
So I was in Australia. I carried on traveling. I traveled through Asia for a bit, got into Australia, carried on traveling, ran out of money, and then made a couple of bad decisions, but I think that was probably reflective of my mental health and my lack of self-care. One of the decisions was to jump on board a deep sea prawn trawler where I was subjected to like grueling physical work, which I wasn't built for, which I hadn't had any experience of, but part of the sort of negative masculinity that I had was envisaging that I could do something like that, and that it would make me more of a man and actually maybe made me stronger if I did 18 hours of night work and was risking my life every second of the day whilst being on a trawler, which could get pulled down at any minute, and living that kind of life. And then basically I got back to shore after the month. I was completely mentally broken by that point, and within a month of that, month and a half, 2 months of that, I ended up in a psychiatric unit in Melbourne, because I'd lost my passport and all my money and had carried on making bad decisions, and at that point was envisaging suicide, basically. After that, I came out, was taking my mental health more seriously, was talking to more people, was talking to professionals. I was lucky enough to get a good job, start saving up some money, managed to buy a passport, managed to buy a flight out of there, and eventually came back to the UK. And within a week of being back in the UK, that's when I discovered CALM. And it was almost, I don't know, synchronicitous, or it just felt like a sign in a way that I'd had this experience. I was trying to make sense of it, and then I found this organization which spoke a lot to me in my experience of not of firstly tackling the stigma of mental health, of the fact that I had always carried around these problematic ideas of what it meant to be a man, hid the fact that I was ever in pain, hid the fact that I was ever struggling, didn't want to fail at anything, and didn't realize that a whole collection of things, including the way that I see women and saw women in relationships, all of those kind of things tied up together meant that I was neglecting myself and my mental health. So that's how I came to discover Calm, and that was 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago now. So.
And what is their mission?
So Calm are a campaign charity. They've been going for about 12 years now. Their mission is, it's a campaign charity, so their main aim has been for a long time to just raise awareness of the fact that suicide was the biggest killer in the UK. For a long time, that was not known. It just so happened that when I got back and got involved with the charity, that's when they really started gaining more and more traction, more and more awareness. I was kind of, it just so happened that I became an advocate of the charity and was talking on the media at the same time as it was getting more and more attention. And so I think their message has kind of developed to not just being, oh, look at this statistic, it's really bad, but also, look, here are some examples of how you can live a positive life, and here are some examples of men who are living positive lives. And they're kind of going against the sort of typical masculine stereotypes of just drinking beer in a bar with your mates and talking about football and women or whatever. And actually there's more to life than just the tropes, which or the stereotypes that you can choose to ignore.
Well, they're bringing depth to it.
They're bringing depth to it, nuance to it, and shining examples, I guess, on men like myself who've managed to overcome depression and found a new path in life, which doesn't involve having to do all of those things.
Right.
So, yeah.
I think if I were to ask you, what does it mean to be a man? Right. What, I'm going to throw that definition at you, which is, I know it's kind of a heavy one.
Yeah. It's something which I'm constantly exploring. I think for a while I was very anti-masculine because I kind of associated a lot of the problems that I had with the masculinity that had been quite toxic in my life. When people say toxic masculinity, I know a lot of people dismiss that term. For me, it's very real, and I'll always, I could talk for way too long about how the fact that I believe that's an appropriate term to use. So for a while I was just, and I think it's very typical for pro-feminist men or men who are aware of their masculinity to just think that it's a problem. And actually we need to embrace our feminine side, which I agree with, that you need to embrace your feminine side, but actually there are things about being a man which I think are quite good. Not exclusively being a man, if you like, but masculine traits. And I think, being brave, being courageous, standing up for other people, standing up in sort of the face of adversity, and making the most of sort of the hand you're dealt. Those sort of, and I said not uniquely masculine traits, but all of those kind of messages about being responsible and all of that kind of stuff, which you're drummed into as a young man. I don't think those kind of things are wrong. It's just that they should exist in a vacuum on their own. And so I think what's great about being a man, for me being a man now, is thinking, well, I can have all of that, but at the same time I can also I can cry as much as I like, and can call my friends, I can tell my male friends that I love them in a non-romantic way or whatever. I can explore other areas of my personality which aren't just locked into the weekend comes around, I have to play a sport, I have to go to a bar. I can do other things. I can explore my artistic side. And so for me, being a man is like, it's a constantly changing experience for me. I don't know if that's very vague and wishy-washy.
No, it's not, because I think when we see ourselves as like linear, that can kind of deflate us. But when you're a work in progress, and there's the terms that you used earlier with being brave and courageous, those are empowering, those are strengthening. There's nothing toxic about that. And I think, then you kind of added to that, it's okay to cry. It's okay to say, you know what, I'm having a tough day, and call your mates and saying, this is what's going on. I think for a lot of males, have been fed that if I talk about my emotions or I have a breakdown, I am weak and there's something wrong with me. Well, when we're looking at 75% of loss is connected to suicide in the UK, and it's one of the top causes of death among men in the United States. That's drastic. That's intense. Something needs to be changing. And I know Calm and yourself, the voice behind that, but how, if there's a dad or a mom listening to this, there's a young man that's listening to this that okay, what words of advice do you give them and saying it's okay, we all have emotions. We all have emotions.
So I'll come to that answer. So I was in a classroom just the other day delivering workshops for another organization I spent a lot of time giving time for, which is called the Good Lad Initiative, or formerly Great Men. There's lots of we'll just call it the Great Men Initiative. They've gone through a rebrand, which we're all debating at the moment. But we go into schools, we talk to young men, talk to teenage boys about their experiences. Really, we just facilitate conversations just to get them talking about issues which they've probably never spoken about before or really explored. They just absorb what's going on in the world around them, the media messaging, the advertising, all those sort of images of masculinity in men, and they kind of take that all in. And we're just there to be like, hey, does this apply to you? Do you have to live up to these kind of stereotypes, or do you want, can we explore what else masculinity could be? Really important conversations which I wish that I could have had when I was that age. And I remember one question which we ask the boys is it okay for men to cry? And would you be embarrassed if you were to be crying in school in front of your friends? Usually quite leads to quite interesting discussion, quite open discussion. And one boy really openly and honestly said, I know it's wrong, but if I see a man crying, then I think in my head, in the back of my mind, I think there's something wrong with him. I think that's weak. Right. But I do know that that's not, I don't know where that thought comes from, but I do know that it's not what I want to be thinking. And for a 15-year-old to have that awareness, I thought was quite impressive anyway. But just to be able to validate that thought and be like, okay, right, yeah, you're going to have these thoughts because we've all been socialized, we've all been conditioned to have these thoughts. But it's great that you can see that for what it is, and just know that if you're in a situation where you're crying or you're wanting to cry or feeling like life is piled up against you, then I'd say that there's now a growing movement of men, women out there who are accepting of the fact that men, young men, boys, whatever, can cry, and just start talking to your friends, just start talking to other people going through the same things as you. If you're really young and it's things like exam stress or stress involved in relationships or other sort of dramas that we have when we're growing up and we're young, then the likeliness is everyone around you is probably going through a very, very similar thing. It's just you don't really want to. They're all probably in the same boat, which is also that they don't know how to talk about it, don't want to talk about it, don't feel like they've got the skills or don't even know that they haven't got the skills that will allow them to talk about it. So just start talking about it, because you're only going to gain something from that. And even if it's not you specifically who's struggling, if you are there listening to someone else, or you can let other people know that you are there to listen to someone else, that for me is one of the biggest gifts, not just to give someone else, but the gifts for yourself. Because of my position and how I've projected myself as someone who is going around and talking to men and young boys and setting up men's groups and working in mental health, I have put myself in a position where a lot of people do talk to me about their problems, and I always feel very blessed and grateful that they've chosen to open up. It always feels really good.
Well, they're trusting you.
Yeah,
it is. It's like they're kind of giving you a piece of their heart and saying, I've not talked to anybody about something that's so personal.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty massive.
Yeah, exactly. And something which obviously you'd have a lot of experience with.
Well, but it's you've, I mean, I'm going to say men in particular who, oh my gosh, I never have talked about my emotions before, and they trust you enough. And we need more of that. And I know you've worked with men for a number of years, specifically high school kids, but also men in support groups. Do you feel like the beginning, that the cracking, kind of that hard surface takes Has it gotten less time? Like I know there's been a lot behind the media within the last few years talking about mental health. Do you think that's helped with men that you're working with being more receptive to opening up quicker, or is that kind of stayed consistent in terms of that timeline?
It's hard for me to say. I think I'd probably need to look at we probably need to talk to a lot of other people doing the same sort of thing. I need to probably do more research. But what I would say from my experience is that the problems aren't going away as much as I thought they would. I think when I kind of discovered this, and I was so surprised and so like empowered when I started talking to people and started getting other people to talk and setting up men's groups, I thought I was going to be at the start of this massive revolution where like men would realize, oh my God, like we're all bound by these stupid ideas which are keeping us miserable. Let's change that. And because it changed so much for me. But the suicide rate is still the same. Like it's not really coming down much. And I think there's reasons for that. I think, it's all well and good me, like a few of us running men's groups, in the odd location where we can get to. And I don't think I think the messages are just getting through into our education system, particularly our young education system, but there's certainly not the provision in schools that there needs to be for mental health. There's not the provision in society in general for mental health. If you go to a doctor now and you say you're depressed, I think in the NHS you can wait up to 9 to 12 months to get your 6 sessions of cognitive behavioural therapy. So we're all doing our bit in the third sector. We're saying and doing the right things, but there's a lot of change that needs to happen at the top, and it's just not happening. And I know this might not be a political podcast, but this is political. Our mental health is political. It's tied into everything. And so I would always urge for there to be improved provision and improved awareness in education and lots of other things, really.
A lot of it, I think, if we talk on the political end, is priorities.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about mental health. Well, to me, you have to put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
We're dealing with kids, and you could say, okay, Matt's going to go talk to kids. Well, there's one of you. And what are we doing to make sure you're in a good spot mentally? Because it drains the heck out of you when you're working on the front lines.
Yeah.
To saying we need to train more people. We need to put more money when it comes to, little kids all the way up into university, and then people in the workplace.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of times when we talk about prevention and mental health, whatever, party, you have a politician or people that I believe are not on the front lines, not realizing that it has to be a long-term vision.
Yeah, exactly. And it has to be prevention as well. Like it's all well and good saying, okay, we've trained up these counselors now, but like we're not changing the things that we're not getting in there early enough to.
Well, what you are, this is the analogy I use.
Yeah.
You're like a firefighter given a bucket with holes in it, and you're going from house to house. You can.
Yeah.
You're putting out fires, and that's not fair to anybody involved, and you're doing wonderful things. But there's got to be more of you. There has to be prevention, and it has to be a number of people sitting in a room over time, like, let's come up with a program, and it's money.
Yeah.
Money that could save people's lives.
Yeah.
For that number not to begin coming down, something needs to change drastically. And the same thing in the United States. Why should you have to wait 6 weeks to go see a counselor and then only get approved for 6 sessions? That's insane. That's unfair, because now we just start getting to, past the tip of that iceberg. Now your sessions are up.
Yeah. I also think a big part of it as well is I don't know if you want to go down that sort of political
Bring it, baby.
But if you're looking at, if studies are telling us that the biggest cause of mental health issues and stress is financial worry, and poverty the poverty levels in this country in particular are getting worse, and we don't seem to have a shift towards trying to change that either. So yes, there is a statistic out there which says 1 in 4 people will have mental health issues, or will experience depression or whatever. That is the implication that it could affect any one of us, and absolutely it could. But the prevalence of mental health issues within poorer communities is rife, much, much higher. And yeah, so it's all well and good saying, okay, we need to talk about mental health, but let's talk about the solutions as well, and let's talk about long-term solutions. Let's talk about actually making a change. Because
that's how change happens.
Yeah,
we can point fingers. That only gets us frustrated and take has our energy extracting in all the wrong places. I know we kind of hit on some heavy stuff, and my mind's kind of in a million directions right now. But I do say, we have so many people who are hurting. And I think all of us, if we're very open, which can be very, very challenging for many of us, because it's, wow, I've never shared this before. There's a lot of people struggling. And if you're not struggling, I can promise you somebody within your inner circle is struggling.
Yeah.
And so just like you said just a few moments before, even if you're the listener and letting people have that green light of it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, I can't be your therapist, but I'm here to listen.
Yeah.
Right. That just in itself, I think, is a wonderful, empowering thing, because something needs to change. I mean, you know, I shared this with you before while we went on air, that not less than a week ago, a student that I knew graduated from the high school I worked at is no longer here, and he took his life. And it's like person after, like, it's not a statistic. It's a human being that somebody's daughter, brother, best friend, like somebody, and it's emotions. 100% of us have them, right?
Yeah.
So if 100% of us have them, we need to begin talking more about them and making it more tangible, that it's okay to talk. And then providing, saying, like, we need to make mental health support more accessible, because it's not. And then when you have somebody, well, you know what, they took their life, or they tried to take their life.
Yeah. And
like, what the heck?
And I mean, so it kind of is one of these things which drives me really, because when, I mean, I know that you know this, and I know that I know this, and most of your listeners will probably know this as well, that to be in that place where, like, suicide is an option for you, there are very few painful experiences imaginable compared to that. Yeah, as you said, we all have emotions, we can all feel, and I think even if you haven't experienced it yourself, just knowing that your ability to even monitor how you're feeling, to even be aware of how you're feeling, even sort of the mind that controls the mind, if you like, the overarching viewpoint, even if that's completely gone at that point, and yeah, I just kind of sometimes get caught up. Not caught up. I sometimes have to think about that, because it's just like, when someone has gotten to that level, even, you know, if you know someone that's getting to that level, there are things you can do. Yeah, you might not. You don't have to be a counselor. You don't have to be psychologically trained. But just saying to someone that, like, it's okay. This is going to end, because you don't know at that point. You don't think it's going to end at all. That's the whole point. You think that this is it. This is going to be it forever. Just getting in there and just having the confidence to say, hey, it's going to be fine. Like, these are some people you can talk to if you're not feeling comfortable enough to talk to them about that. But I think we all pick up tips, and we all pick up guides through life to improve our physical health, or improve our I've just had a session at the dentist the other day, so I got a telling off about how I need to improve my dental health, which is quite typical, I guess. British people don't look after our teeth that well, but yeah, and it's just like, so I picked up some tips there, something which I need to do better to look after my teeth. Well, here's some, like, just think about what you're doing to improve your mental health, to improve the collective mental health of the people around you, and, like, take those tips on board. You know, be there to be actively listening for other people. If someone comes up to you and they're like, and you say, oh, how are you doing? And they're like, oh, yeah, I'm fine. That might not mean that they're fine. Ask again, like, you know, how are you actually? Like, what's going on in your life? If it's a colleague at work and you're saying, how are you? And they're telling you about the job which they're doing, you're like, okay, I'm not interested in the spreadsheet you're making. Let's talk about what's going on. It can make a real difference. Giving permission is a big thing. Just allowing someone to say that they're feeling not great, and saying that's okay. You're allowed to feel like that. Any opportunity you can get to do that could change someone's life. So,
big time.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a game changer. And I think kind of even bringing it to social media, like, we're over-connected society right now. We have the world at our fingertips, but we don't. We're the loneliest that we've ever been.
Yeah.
And so for someone to hear a human, right, that, you know, I'm here, we need to talk. It's okay to not be okay, to not feel okay right now.
Yeah.
I think it's a message more people need to hear.
Yeah. We're all different. I think sometimes sort of social media can make us all feel that we're very connected. Like you can feel that you've got
it can have positives. Yes, it can. Right.
But a lot of the time, for a lot of people, you know, especially in our generation, we didn't grow up with this in our lives as children. So like we're going into our adult life and you can feel that you're connected to people, but actually you're used to it. You may well be used to being more sociable than that and actually talking to people. And so making the most of those human connections, getting outside, going and spending time with your friends, being physically active, you know, that genuinely matters more than how many people have just liked your last Instagram post, in my opinion. And you know, I'm on social media, so I'm not saying it's an awful thing.
No, but everything in moderation. And so, you know, instead of, you know, sitting in your basement and playing video games for 12 hours, it's like, I'm going to get some fresh air.
Yeah.
I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to, you know, I think everything, you have to have a game plan. Or if I'm feeling this way, it's okay to say, you know, let's go get a cup of coffee. Having a game plan, because it's like, when we don't, the bottom can fall out. And kind of getting back a little bit with the mental health, you know, self-care thing, I think we can kind of be really stubborn sometimes, where we focus on more things besides us. Like we have our car, right? Every 6 months you go get an oil change and check the tires, check the, you know, the fluids, you know, it's the weather's changing from winter to spring. We're opening our windows. We're dusting. Those are things we drive, and a place we're in, you know, 8-12 hours out of the day. We're in our bodies 24/7. And it's the same thing we need to be attended to, whether that's talking to somebody or, you know, being physically active. Self-care, I think has a role in what's going on up here, and knowing, okay, if I'm not feeling okay, it's time to go, you know.
Yeah.
It's a maintenance.
And also, like, and the other exciting thing, which makes us more interesting than our cars, is the fact that it's just an ongoing experiment. So like, I was telling you earlier today, yesterday I've been writing a film script. I'm going to be shooting a film later on today. I've never done that before, but it's something which I'm learning I really, really enjoy. So like, life is just one long experiment, and you can apply the same thinking to your mental health. Like, if you're not feeling great, and it doesn't mean that everything needs to change in your life and that everything is going wrong, despite the fact that that's what your mind might be telling you when you're waking up in the mornings and it's hard to get out of bed. It could just be that you've not found the right sort of recipe to maintain, you know, a happy self. But then again, also, we all have bad days, and it's just really important to know that if you're having a bad day and you're doing all of these things and you are exercising and you're eating well and you're being, you know, creative and you're connected with nature and all of these other things which you can try and do, you know, even then you can still have a bad day. But that's what makes it interesting. And that's when you really appreciate the good days. But I'd say, one other thing, when I was working in mental health, when I was working for a mental health charity as a support worker, we had a lot of clients who were experiencing quite severe mental health issues. And so a big part of their life was to find the right mix, was to find the right recipe. And we would have, you know, if we're at whatever stage of your mental health journey that you're at, if you're seeing therapy or if you're on medication and it's not working for you, that doesn't mean therapy doesn't work for you, and it doesn't mean medication doesn't work for you. It just means that you might not have quite found the right type of therapist, or your relationship with the therapist might not be as good as it could be with another kind of therapist. Just keep searching. Like, you might just keep going. There are so many options out there, I'm sure. You know, one of the reasons why you're in London today is probably to learn over this next few days, is to learn so much more about all the other different kinds of therapies and treatments that are out there. And so if you're going through it, I'd say just keep searching.
Yeah. Always learning.
Always learning. Learning about yourself.
Which I think makes it exciting. So it's like, you know, keeps things interesting. But I wanted to say, Matt, thank you for joining me today. I know we kind of hit on a lot of different things, but I also want to kind of relay to you guys listening, if you're kind of feeling the tug in your heart that maybe you're not in a good place, taking some of the tips that we kind of chatted about and knowing it's okay to go and talk to somebody, whether that's a friend or whether that's a counselor. And if you have somebody in your life where right now you're thinking, I'm worried about this person, it's okay to take that step. And it can be scary and uncomfortable sometimes, but being a friend can be uncomfortable sometimes if we're a real friend, and talking and engaging and saying, you know what, like, what's up? And I'm worried about you. And the reality is we're not alone. We're not supposed to go through life alone. and that we all are a work in progress. And so today, my friends, I'm wishing you the utmost peace, love, and goodness. If you enjoyed today's show, I encourage you to visit goodnesschick.com and sign up for my newsletter, providing insights and encouragement just for you. Thanks for listening, my friends.